Most performance management systems are completely broken. Instead of helping employees succeed, they shame them into oblivion. And let's be honest, they're also frustrating for managers. And worse still, they push otherwise good people out the door. But here's the truth. Underperformance isn't usually even about the employee, it's about broken systems. In this video, I'll show you how to fix underperformance the right way. Without ultimatums, without shame, and without losing some of your best people. Because if you get this wrong, you're gonna lose more than just one employee. Your team's trust, motivation, and respect are all on the line here. When you think of performance management, what comes to mind? It's the warnings, the performance improvement plans, or PIPs. It's all that top-down ultimatum stuff, right? On paper, it all sounds pretty reasonable. Here's your issue, here's a deadline to fix it by, go get that done, or goodbye. But in practice, they fail over and over. Why? Well, because they're not designed for growth. They're designed to protect the company from lawsuits. And employees, well, they see them for what they really are, which is witch hunts. They don't feel like a path to improvement. They feel like gathering evidence for the dismissal. I saw this firsthand. Years ago, I was working with an office manager who was making a lot of mistakes in our bookkeeping package. So I gave them the ultimatum and a deadline. And guess what happened? Less than 2 weeks later, they'd found a new job. They were gone. And you know what? I'm not surprised. Because shame doesn't motivate people. That's what I got wrong. So if punishment doesn't work, what does? Well, the solution is moving from shame to blockers. Most managers treat underperformance like a character flaw. They're lazy or unmotivated or they just don't care. But when you focus on the employee, you miss the systems that are holding them back. Imagine you're trying to build an exercise habit. The traditional approach is to just white knuckle it on willpower alone. But as soon as life introduces even a little bit of friction, you get sick or you have a busy week, your willpower collapses. And it's bye-bye exercise. Work is no different. Picture this. Imagine you've got an employee and they just spent weeks building a 25-page report. And then suddenly they lose it all to a cloud storage glitch. It happens to the best of us. What does that do to their motivation? And what does that do to their confidence? With their motivation and confidence shot, they might feel like a lazy employee. But we know the truth. It was a broken system that caused the problem. That's where even more managers miss the mark. They get so focused on either fixing or getting rid of the employee that they don't stop to think about building better systems. So how do you build a better system? It's simple, but you have to get the employee involved. One of the 5 pillars of employee engagement is input, or having a say in how things are done. So when we co-create solutions with our employees, they trust the process more. And as a result, they buy into it more. Remember that office manager story? Well, it turns out I had the same issues with the next employee too. And it got me thinking that it might not be an employee problem. So I sat down with this new employee and we started looking at the whole system, looking for points of friction. And once we found them, we worked together on building a solution. That employee didn't quit. In fact, they're still there today and they've taken on more responsibilities. The difference here wasn't their willpower. It was our collaboration. Now, before we go deeper, I want to give you a practical tool that you can start using right away. I've put together a free guide that goes through my DRIVE framework. DRIVE stands for direction, resources, input, visibility, and engagement. It gives you a step-by-step path for diagnosing employee underperformance and figuring out where the real issues lie. It's free and it'll make everything we're talking about here much easier to apply. There's a link in the description if you want to grab it. All right, let's get back into it. Co-creating solutions is only the first step. If you want those solutions to produce lasting change, you have to turn them into systems. Here's where even the great managers trip up. They identify friction, implement a fix, and then they walk away. Performance management shouldn't be one and done. It needs to be built into a process loop instead. And it's a simple process. You identify friction, co-create a solution, monitor for improvement, and repeat. Just because you found friction doesn't mean that you got all of it, or that your fix is working properly. Say that you have an underperformer and you find out that they spend half their week in meetings. They find it hard to get any deep work done. So you work together and you carve out a few hours of focus time each week. You test it and check back in and discover that they're still struggling to use the focus time that you allotted for them. So you look for new points of friction and new ways to iterate on the solution. Maybe they're being held back by work that should be delegated to another employee, or there's friction with another team that needs to be smoothed over. The point is to keep looping back, looking for more friction, and testing the solutions to that friction to make sure they're working. It's a lot like good product development. You don't just launch once and forget about it. You improve and iterate over time. But even with a good performance loop, there's an extra step you can take that will turn your underperformers into top performers. The next step injects some resilience into the system using if-then planning. It's actually really simple. If X happens, then I'll do Y. For example, if I get stuck on a project for more than 30 minutes, then I'll reach out to my manager for more clarification. Or if I close 5 sales calls this week, then I'll treat myself by taking off an hour early on Friday. This is another step that you can co-create with your employee. This type of planning builds resilience because it turns your improvements into habits. When you layer if-then planning into your performance loop, it almost eliminates the need for willpower. And any performance wins that you find become long-lasting and sustainable. This is the difference between temporary fixes and lasting performance improvement. You build repeatable, resilient systems with your employees. Shame is a weapon, and weapons don't inspire growth, they generate fear. And fear is just another form of friction. Systems, on the other hand, reduce friction, and they get your underperformers back on track. And as a bonus, all that care and attention helps build trust with your whole team. So the next time you're sitting across from an underperformer, don't ask what's wrong with them. Find out how you can improve the systems around them. Now, if you're struggling with diagnosing underperformance, you need to know the top 3 questions that I rely on. Check out this video and I'll walk you through them step by step.